All right, you guys. Thanks for making it this far with me. We're 5 episodes in. So the last episode, you guys met my friend Amy, who spent the first half of her career on Wall Street getting involved in crazy experiences, drugs and alcohol and bad behavior justified by insane wealth. She spoke about her transformation when everything came crashing down and what she calls bottoming out. She describes it as having no other choice but to look inward to discover what she really wanted out of life. Super inspiring if you want to go back and listen to that. Unfortunately, she's not really on social media, so I don't have a way for you guys to connect with her. But if you are interested in learning more about her, just send me a DM or an email or any kind of message, contact, anything, and let me know what you would want to hear from her and I. So I'm going to flip the script and I'm going to talk a little bit about something that is intense for me. And I just want to forewarn you guys that it does get a little emotional for me. Not a little, a lot. I'm thinking I'll do a series on this type of stuff because it's actually part of a journey that I'm on that I want to be open to you guys about, something that I'm discovering in myself, a journey that I'm on to learn more about my past, the way that I was brought into this world, and how it affects me even subconsciously. And I don't think I addressed it ever, and I'm going to do it now, and I'm going to take you with me. I talk about things that I've never really even put my finger on in my life ever. I'm making it a priority in my life now, and that is really scary. It's unsettling. It's set into motion, so I really can't stop it at this point, but I want to make the most of it and make it as helpful to you guys as I possibly can to help you guys uncover the things that are latent inside of you all, because we all have it. But I just want to let you guys know that it is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little intense. It's going to be a little heavy. And I want you guys to know that I trust you all, and I trust this process, and I trust what the universe has in store for me, because I don't know how this story is going to unfold. I want to grow and evolve and become the best person that I possibly can. And I'm just done avoiding it. So I am ready to face this part of my life that I have avoided the entire time. I don't even know that I've ever talked about this to the extent, or even thought about this to the extent that I'm about to talk about it. It's making me nervous. It's weird that I'm here doing this, because I thought about doing it when I started this podcast. My social media has changed in the way that I consume it significantly over the past 6 months. And I look for more inspiring content, things that energize me and bring new perspective. You know, when you see a post or read a quote and it just speaks to you and you're like, whoa, that is meaningful for me. It speaks to me. So I don't even remember the day that this happened, but I was looking at a post, and the quote, which I'd never heard before, was, "Show me your trauma, and I'll show you the key to your life's purpose." it was so powerful for me to read that. I don't know what it was. I instantly started crying when I read that. So I saved that, obviously, and kept going back to it. I was so intrigued by this concept because not only is it a quote, it's a whole way of thinking. And so I, of course, went to the account that it was posted by, and the account was at Mastin Kipp, MASTINKIPP. And come to find out, he is a best-selling author and speaker. Oprah Winfrey actually recognized him as an up-and-coming thought leader of the next generation of spiritual thinkers. I mean, you want to talk about a referral. You can't really do better than that as far as a referral. So trauma. When I read the quote and looked into this individual where the quote came from, obviously I was initially thinking about my trauma. What's happened to me in my life that could qualify as trauma. When I looked into this a little bit deeper, Mastin defines trauma as a nightmare of thoughts, images, and emotions based on past wounds that creates unconscious and irrational stress in the body that suspends awareness of our infinite nature. It's like a lot to unpack. So in ancient Greek, the word trauma actually means wound or damage. You know, we think about trauma as being specific events in our life. Obviously, you know, when you hear the word trauma, you think, oh, something obviously traumatic happening, like a car accident or someone that went through some incredibly horrendous injury or some sort of physical / psychologically damaging occurrence like abuse. So as I was going through the list in my head of, well, all those things are traumatic, and I honestly haven't been through anything that terrible. So Mastin kind of goes into this in his book, which I, of course, went and bought it. It's called Claim Your Power. I'm holding it right now. The book mentions that trauma isn't necessarily, and this is when it stuck with me, trauma isn't necessarily something that happened to you, but it can also mean something that you needed in your life you were deprived of. And that's kind of when it clicked to me that it has to be the fact that I was abandoned when I was less than a day old. The book it's really fascinating to read because it's super relatable. I mean, he talks about all these concepts that they spoke to me immediately. I know that they could speak to other people. He talks about limiting beliefs and the stories that we invent in our minds that are based off of notions that we've been given from people in our lives. And they're not necessarily the people that you would expect to be holding us back, but they really are. And that group mentality of not separating from the pack, just our belief systems, the way we develop our belief systems that are based off of stories that we tell ourselves, based off of our original incidents, which are our traumas. And you can have more than one trauma. It's not necessarily one thing. And they don't have to be huge. They don't have to be you got hit by a car when you were a toddler. He actually talks about one of his traumatic moments, and I'll tell you about it. His mother had a lot of back problems, and I think it was back issues that she had through childbirth. So he discusses at one point when she got back from the hospital, I think she flew somewhere and had to come back on a stretcher through the airline. And when he was waiting for her at the airport and saw her come through the terminal, he ran up to her and jumped on her. And when he did that, it caused her a lot of pain. She howled in pain. And then for a huge portion of his life growing up, he associated that anytime he expressed love, that it caused other people pain. I mean, if you think about this one finite moment in this young guy's life, where something happened, and because of the way it transpired, it set a course for him to believe something completely inaccurate, and therefore a sequence of belief patterns were built based off of this one incident. Single solitary moments in our lives can set the course for our destiny. We can grapple with these things for a better portion of our lives if we don't have the tools and the understanding of how our mentalities and our belief systems can really be manipulated and manipulate themselves into patterns of behavior, and it can really mold us into something that we never really wished we had become. I think we go about our days and we don't really digest some of the trauma that we've gone through. Maybe we avoid it. Maybe we believe that we've overcome it. Maybe we don't even know that it's there. Those important moments in our lives are actually dictating how we continue through our lives. It's not like you need to have endured child abuse of some sort or some terrible accident in your life to have it constitute being trauma. It could have been maybe your father worked really late, and so he was really tired when he got home from work, and therefore you felt unworthy of his love and attention when you were a little child. Or maybe your parents fought a lot when you were younger, and because of that, you had a disproportionate interpretation of the relationship between a man and a wife. You kind of have to dig deep and think about the conditioning in your mind, which sounds a little backwards because we're not necessarily thinking our mind is conditioned all the time, every day in our life. We're not thinking, oh, I'm conditioned to, want to get a cup of coffee, or I'm conditioned to always buckle before I even close the car door, or something like that. The things that you know to be true in your life, the things that you never question, the things that they just seem like your reality. It's not even a question of whether it's a belief or not. In your mind, it's an absolute. Why do we do the things that we do? When I first started delving into all this trauma work, that's what Maston calls it. He calls it trauma work because it is work, because it's really hard. It was hard for me. I don't go about my day thinking about how I was adopted. It's not something that I think about. I had a very good childhood growing up. I talked about this in episode 2. My parents are amazing. I can't believe how lucky I got. And that almost makes it harder for me to address the situation. My parents are just the perfect balance of compassion and sensitivity and discipline and ambition and dedication. The moral fiber of my mother and my father combined as a family unit, I couldn't have asked for better. They represent so many admirable qualities in a human being alone, let alone someone that is going to raise and nurture younger human beings in this world. So when I first brought up this need to address this trauma work with Erica, my coach who you guys met a couple episodes ago, it made it more difficult for me to want to have to face it, because in my mind, I'm thinking, there's no reason to go into this. You had a wonderful childhood growing up, so stop complaining. Maybe it started out rough for you when you were a little baby, but you got dealt a better hand after that. And it's weird to me because the good fortune in my life almost makes it harder for me to address the reality of the trauma that I've gone through. Because of my amazing upbringing, I'm not really in a position to go seeking out the trauma in my life that occurred before that. And also, I felt guilty. I felt guilty for wanting to know about my birth mother and birth father when I had 2 amazing parents that were there for me the entire time afterwards. Almost like it was saying to them, with everything that you did for me, it's still not enough. And that pains me to think that I would make them feel that way. Erica is a person of action, so she told me that, you need to talk to your parents about this. I also knew that they were going to be okay with it, which made it harder. It was just like, they just love me and my sister so much. They just love us so unconditionally that it makes it harder. Like, I felt even guiltier because I knew that they were going to be okay with it. I can't explain it. I felt even guiltier. Maybe I was using them as a scapegoat to not have to address it, because I was like, oh, my parents are there, so I can't really talk about that. But if they gave me permission to talk about it and delve into it, then what other excuse do I have to not do this trauma work? So the next time that I was home, I spoke to them about it. We were in the car and they were driving me back to the Amtrak station to go back to New York. And my mom was just saying, we support you. We love you. And it's interesting. She said something, oh God, it makes me love her even more. She said, as parents, and this is true of any parent, when you're raising little ones and doing the very best that you can to guide them and to raise them well, and at the end of the day, we're just human beings also, and we make mistakes. And I think any parent would look back on how they raised their child, and maybe they would look back and think they could have done things differently. I don't necessarily know. I don't think she meant that she regrets anything. I think she just meant that if there are pieces of your life that you're not fulfilled and happy, and I could have done something more for you, I would have. She just said that she wants my happiness, and through this conversation, she learned that there are things in my life that are missing. And regardless of whether she had anything to do with that hole in my life, she's my mother, and she wishes that there's something that she could have done. It was really beautiful of her to feel that and to say that. And those are the things that make it even harder for me, is that that's the kind of woman that she is. That's the kind of mother that she is. And I don't ever want to be a source of pain for her or make her feel like what she did wasn't enough, because what she did and what my father did, it's everything for me and my sister. So I almost felt like wanting to know about my birth mother and father is almost like saying, like, you did a good job, but it wasn't enough. But they told me that they didn't take it that way and that they understood. And then they went further and said that we wish we could do more to make what you're going through not as difficult. I mean, you can't ask for better. So just having the conversation with people was helpful. It made it more real. I also purchased the book and I started reading. It leads you down the pathway of identifying your trauma and therefore identifying your purpose. I don't want to give too much of the book away, but I really do recommend it because we all have trauma. All of us. Every one of us has trauma. And uncovering the trauma is a very important part of healing the trauma. And even if we know what it is, we may not have necessarily gone about healing it in the correct ways. Because it's traumatic, we really try to avoid it because we have too many things to do in our life. But This is the work. This is the work. If you think about your life and your job and your responsibilities and your bills and maybe your pet or your spouse or your kids or whatever, all your responsibilities in your life that you think come before your trauma is the work, because so many parts and pieces and components of your life, your beliefs, the way that you go about everything that you do is based on these experiences in your life that are dictating the person that you are. And if you can't address those things, you may never get to be that person that you want to be, live that purpose that you are craving for, that meaning in your life. When I finished the book, my action step was I booked a flight to South Korea. And I booked it with the thought of, I'm just going to book the airfare that way I can't get out of it. Instead of just toggling with the idea and then waiting for a couple of years to go by and not actually doing the trip, I decided to take that step to incite myself to continue on this work up until that point, and then throughout. And then after that, I booked the trip to solidify that I'm in this work, I'm doing this, there's no getting out of it. And then the next time I went home to visit my parents, they provided me with all the paperwork. So I had asked them, can you just gather up anything that you have in terms of my adoption, paperwork through the foster agency, social work, or anything through the U.S. agency. So there was this folder waiting for me when I got to my parents' house. I'll read some stuff. This background information is dated August 29th, 1988. Child's name, Bae, B-A-E, comma, C-S-I, Young, Y-U-N-G. That's why my middle name is Y, Steve Y. Gardner. It's because my actual middle name is Young. So Bae C. Young. And Bae, just for those of you who don't know, Bae is the family name. So in Korea, the family name goes first. So Bae, comma, C. Young. I was born on June 22nd, 1987. I was referred by the director of Daesungwon, which I think is the foster home that I was in. It says that I was abandoned at an alley by a house located at 32-4, I don't know how to pronounce this, in Daegu City. So a police dispatcher found me in an alleyway. So the reason for relinquishment, at 7 a.m. on June 23rd, 1987, the child was found at the said place. At that time, he was with the umbilical cord hanging, was wrapped in a blanket, decorated with pink, yellow, and white patterns, and had one suit of clothes. So a day after I was born, I was found in an alleyway in Daegu City with a suitcase and an umbilical cord hanging out. And there is no information on my birth mother or my birth father or any siblings. I wasn't abandoned like in a shoebox in a dumpster, but I was meant to be found. This is funny. So there's a report on my development. Information in areas of motor, coordination, hearing, vision, speech, elimination, teething, eating, sleeping, etc. Eats rice at every meal, being spoon-fed. Uses a spoon but spills. Isn't choosy about side dishes. This is all about me, by the way. Enjoys stew, egg, and meat. Well, that hasn't changed. Drinks 240 cc of milk every 6 hours. That has changed. 4 times a day. For snacks, loves cookies, apple, and beverage. Sleeps from 8 p.m. until 6 a.m. It's pretty good. Doesn't fuss before sleep. Takes a nap for 2 hours from 12 p.m. until 2 p.m. Digests well. Isn't fully independent in toileting. Understands what adults say, says short words, expresses himself through facial expressions, enjoys playing with other children, plays with toys or a toy horse, Speaks Uma, mom, and baba, papa, and young, hello, bye-bye, and so on. Warms up quickly to strangers, is obedient to adults. While playing with other children, he leads them. I was a leader back then. Cannot dress and undress himself. It's okay, nobody's perfect. Observes daily rules. Child's location. It's about 30 minutes riding distance from the Holt branch office to the Dae-sung-won. Holt is the adoption agency, and the Dae-sung-won is the foster home that I was living in, the facility that I was staying. So Dae-sung-won, the facility has a small swimming pool, a beautiful garden, and play equipment. In addition, it provides the children many toys and picture books for their emotional development. They are doing well under the loving care of experienced caretakers. Evaluation and recommendation. C. Young, that's me, is slightly delayed in physical development, but he is in good health. He is a bright child with fair skin. He is loved very much by the caretakers. For the sake of his optimum development, it would be good for him to be adopted rather than to live in the facility. So all this was being written about me. And at the same time, my parents were on the other side of the world trying to have a son. So April 30th, 1988, adoption home study update on Mark and Kathleen Gardner, my parents. I loved reading this. So when I got the paperwork from my parents, I read this and I don't know, I learned so much going through this already. And I'm just starting on this journey, which is why I'm talking about it and sharing it with you guys now. I'm just starting this. And through this, I've learned so much. I learned how hard my parents worked to have me and Kelly. I guess I didn't really understand the extent of it. I knew that they had been trying to have a son through adoption. It took several years. So I was not even born yet when they had started the search process to adopt a son. And just seeing how hard they worked and how dedicated they were and how much they wanted to be parents. I don't know. It's such a nice thing. When you adopt a kid, you so want to have children. That's how badly you want to have children. You're willing to spend the money. You're willing to fill out all the paperwork, and you're willing to go through all these interviews and background checks and back and forth. And reading this, just, I don't know. I love them even more reading this. Mark Gardner is a very good-looking man who is 32 years of age. Wow, that's crazy. So this report was done. Wow, that's crazy. This report was done April 30th, 1988, was done at the time that my dad was 32 and I'm 32 now. So I'm literally learning about who my parents were at the exact age that I am now. Description and background. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's really, really long, but I loved reading this because I love my parents and it was so nice to learn about them. Mark Gardner is a very good-looking man who is 32 years of age. He has blonde hair, blue eyes, and fair skin. He has a friendly smile that reflects his warm personality. He is 5'10" and weighs 170 pounds. Although Mark is boyish in appearance, he is in fact mature far beyond his years. He is a hard worker both at home and at work. He writes that he is a quiet person who likes to spend a lot of time at home. That is so him. He does not like to socialize. Here's something interesting that it's a fun fact about Mark and Kathy Gardner. Kathy and Mark married after only knowing each other for 4 months. Can you guys believe that? They both feel it was love at first sight. A mutual friend introduced them, feeling they were perfect for each other, and Kathy and Mark now laugh and agree that she was right. Kathy is a pretty young lady who is 30 years of age. I can't believe that. She's only 30 here. How cute is that? Kathy grew up in a very secure home with a loving family. She is one of 3 children of William and Teresa Riley. Love my grandparents. They live in Florida. We're going to visit them next month. Kathy enjoys her home, and sewing is her favorite hobby. She has light brown hair, blue eyes, and a clear, fair complexion. I definitely didn't get my complexion from her. She dresses in a feminine and stylish manner and is always well groomed. That's funny to me.
Kathy feels she can be independent and assertive when the situation calls for it. She has had to work at this as she was a very shy child. She was very shy. She always talks about how the best parts of both of them rubbed off on one another. So my mom was very shy and my dad taught her to be more assertive. My dad was very cavalier and bravado when they first met, and she kind of softened him. So one thing that stuck out to me that I kind of learned something about my dad, stuff that I didn't know. He's very quiet about his upbringing. It says here, Mark did not have a secure or happy childhood. That just kills me. That makes me really upset. I just wish he would open up a little bit more to me. I didn't even know some of this stuff. Mark did not have a secure or happy childhood, but emerged from it respecting his mother and with a deep appreciation of his wife and his present life. He was the youngest of the 6 children and perhaps received more of his mother's attention than did the older children. His parents never got along, either before their marriage or through the time they were living together. They did not do things as a family, and money was scarce. Mark's parents separated, and Mark does not see his father or really knows his whereabouts. His mother worked very hard to buy a house, and Mark was able to help her when he was finished with school and working. His mother died at 63 of cancer, and Mark then moved out of the house into his own apartment to establish his independence. I gained a deeper appreciation for the people that adopted me, not just the fact that they're my parents, but the people that they are. The individuals that they are. I think about the childhood that I had, and 2 loving parents and a secure home, and he was really responsible and taking care of us. He just worked really hard. I don't have any memory of my life in Korea, and I think that was another reason why I didn't really believe that this was any work worth doing. It's because I don't have a conscious memory of the experience of being in the foster home or having to move across the world when I was 2 years old. And I'm literally just thinking off the top of my head. I don't have anything really, because I don't know, because I've not done this work yet. But I'm working on it right now. So you're with me here as I'm working on this. I don't know. Now I'm thinking about my birth mother, and I don't even know her. I don't even know who she is. Who is she? Most people are born and they, within moments, are in their mother's arms. I don't know, that it had to have fucked me up not having her. I had her. She had me. And then she was gone. And I was a day old. She left me.
I don't even know it. Sometimes it makes you question what you're even worth.
Sometimes I feel alone. Sometimes I don't really understand why people, I can't wrap my brain around why people love me or what it is about me that makes people feel love. Not that I wasn't loved by her, but I was left by her. So she loved me, but she left me. And if you love me, you could leave me. People that love me might leave me. Sometimes I feel unlovable and I feel leavable. I feel able to be left. I started out in this world completely alone. I was 1 day old and I was completely alone. I was in an alleyway wrapped in blankets by myself, 1 day old. And then sometimes I fear I'm gonna end up that way. She loves me. She loves me. I can't believe she left me. I wonder if she turned around and changed her mind at all or regretted it. A lot of people tell me, well, she gave you up because she loved you. She loved you so much that she wanted you to have a better life. And I'd like to think it was an easy decision for her and that she was doing it for me. They have a story. They have a whole story. There's a story there that I don't know. What was she going through? Why was giving me up a better option for me than keeping me? What would my life have been like if I had stayed there? This is the most that I've thought about it ever. I don't do this. I don't sit and think about this. The world is huge, but it's not that huge. I wonder if she's sitting somewhere right now thinking about her little newborn baby that she left in an alleyway 32 years ago. I know why I feel the things that I feel, these confusing, conflicting feelings that have dictated my whole life up until this point, my relationships with people, my belief systems on how I exist in this world of others. I think I have a fear of abandonment. So when people abandon me, it's really painful. And because of that, I think I avoid deep intimacy. as a way to protect myself. I feel guilty for the times in my life where I resented my adoptive parents. I grew up in a very white town, so I acclimated really well when I was a young child, and I did really funny, cute things, I guess. My mom and dad tell me that when I first was living with them that I was obsessed with socks and shoes. So I would walk around with socks on my hands, and then they said one time when they were changing me, they found like 6 pairs of socks stuffed down my pants. And they think that maybe I didn't have a lot of socks and shoes when I was in Korea, so that's why I was so obsessed with them. I got along really well with other kids, and I had a lot of friends growing up. But when you are different and little children start to learn how to articulate and to pigeonhole one another in that group mentality of rejecting anyone that's not the same, I remember being really little and kids used to call me flat face. And I remember when I was in 2nd grade, I think there was like an open house going on where parents were coming in to see where our classroom was. And the teacher had us do portraits of these pre-made cutouts of either a boy template or a girl template. And then you would color in whatever color hair you had. So if you had blonde hair, you would color in the hair yellow. And if you had brown hair, you'd color in brown. And then you would write your name, and then you would just color whatever it is that you felt like you looked like. And looking back at that, I don't think that would ever fly now, because it was extremely racially insensitive. Because I remember I was always very artistically inclined, even when I was younger. I specifically asked my teacher if I could not use the boy template and actually just draw my own from scratch and make it look exactly like I actually looked. She allowed me to, and she just had me do a cutout that was blank. And instead of the big Caucasian eyes that were on the boy template that you would color in whatever eye color, I drew my own Asian eyes and colored in the skin darker than what the other kids were doing. And I did my hair black. Yeah, I made myself look how I actually looked. And that was like really the first time that I remember identifying that I don't look like the cookie cutter boy version of everybody else. And I'm not going to represent myself that way. I don't want to look like that. I'm not going to pretend to look like that. I'm going to express my individuality. And as we got older, kids would call me Chinese or Chinaman or Bruce Lee. You know, kids would try to assert their own sense of belonging in the group by excluding anyone that was an easy target. And I physically wasn't an easy target. So they would, tell me to go back to China or tell me to leave their country and, things like that. It didn't happen all the time, but it was definitely a thing for me growing up. And I remember just feeling really resentful to my parents for, why would you raise me in a white town? Why would you adopt 2 minority children and try to raise them in this white town? And my choices in my life would have been much more limited had I not been gifted the opportunity to go to the United States, to be with these 2 loving people and be raised by them and have them grant me everything in the world they've given me. Everything in the world. They've given me the world. They have literally wrapped up the world and given it to me. And I was complaining to them for giving me a white world. Looking back on it, I would have returned me. I would have said, are there any refunds? Give this kid back. We want a better one. I think about it now, and it's such a little piece of shit. It makes me feel terrible. This is an emotional roller coaster of regret, of shame, of feeling unworthy, of being loved, of feeling abandoned. and the anger of being an adolescent and feeling like an outcast and feeling typecast. I went to this public high school initially, freshman and sophomore year, so 9th and 10th grade. There was still that bullying going on. I mean, not as often, but it was still prevalent. People are just wrought with insecurity through those hallways. So yeah, they're going to just pick on anything that is a quick and dirty target to make someone else feel low so you can feel a little bit higher. I actually ended up transferring high schools. So I went from the regional high school, the public high school. They had some serious financial issues going on at the time. So I was starting to think about how I could take my love of art and really turn it into a career for myself. So when they cut the art program at my regional high school, I said, I'm not going to sabotage my future by staying here. So I left and I went to a private high school that I had known about all along, but there was a tuition involved. And that's another thing. It's like my parents, I mean, we weren't rich growing up. We were not rich, but I never felt like I wasn't taken care of. I mean, they literally, not only were they paying the taxes in the town that I grew up in order for me to attend public school, but then they were willing to also pay an additional tuition for me to attend private school when my public school failed me. When I went to that other high school, I had the opportunity to be somebody new, and I had an opportunity to really come into my own. And honestly, when you're not riddled with your history and people don't know you as well, you can reinvent yourself in a way. So mostly what I reinvented, because I really didn't change who I was, but I actually just was confident in myself. They weren't people that had me already specifically classified into you're this person and you've been this person the whole time. I was able to be somebody new. And honestly, it was one of the best decisions of my life to go to that high school. I went to Syracuse right after that, where there's, all people from all over the world. And then as soon as I graduated, I moved to New York City, the mecca of diversity. And yeah, that's just, I literally never looked back at that small town mindset ever again. And now that I'm the person that's talking to you right now, dealing with this. And I want to bring this full circle, going back to claiming your power and your purpose. Mastin Kipp talks about on page 9, victim consciousness versus victimization. So when someone is traumatized, you were abused, or you were in a bad accident, or you were slightly neglected by a parent at one point, or something small and incidental but profound happened to you, you are victimized in the moment. Okay, so that is being victimized when you are traumatized. But to be a victim means you are identifying yourself in that moment of incident, and then you create beliefs, emotions, stories, and behaviors that are all designed to prevent further trauma from happening. What that's actually doing is holding you hostage in this identity that you have created for yourself. Because of this, your trauma will always keep you trapped. You will never be free from it. When I was blaming my parents when I was believing anyone that called me Chinaman or flat face or telling me to go back to my own country, I was stuck in victim consciousness. I was literally identifying myself as being the victim. How is that ever going to free me from my trauma? None of us should discredit our trauma. There's no trauma that isn't enough. Each of us has a latent trauma deep within us that is steering or has steered the ship in our lives in some way for far, far too long. Mastin also says on page 9 of Claim Your Power, when we are traumatized, we are asleep to our true nature. The emotions of trauma are stored in our bodies, and regardless of how long it has been since the traumatizing event, our bodies always remember. In fact, we relive our nightmares until we realize that we are the dreamers and can wake up. In short, we continue to hurt ourselves until we heal ourselves. Wow, that is so powerful. So trauma keeps us stuck in our limiting beliefs. Tell me if any of these sound familiar, like maybe you've said these or thought these things to yourself over the years. I don't have enough money to do what I actually want. I don't have enough time to do what I want to do. I'm too old, or it's too late for me. People will think I'm crazy for doing that. I'll never be that lucky to get that far. Must be nice, aka envy of people who are living the way you want to. It's always been done that way. And lastly, what if I fail, get rejected? It doesn't pan out the way that I want it to. So as I'm learning about all this trauma work and the tremendous amount of work that it is, it's so daunting. I start thinking, how do I get out? How do I get out of this spiral that I've been on my entire life, basically? Show me your trauma, and I'll show you the key to your life's purpose. So purpose, what does that mean? That's the second half of the statement. Maston defines purpose as an emotion that you learn to cultivate within yourself and express to others in the form of service to other people. I'll read that again. Purpose is an emotion that you learn to cultivate within yourself and express to others in the form of service to other people. This is work. It is an emotion. Purpose is a feeling. I think a lot of people believe that purpose is your job or your children or taking care of your dog or paying your mortgage. Purpose is something within you that you fine tune and you make real within yourself, of yourself. So how can you take that feeling that you have, that feeling deep, deep within you that has been there all along, and make that feeling real, manifest that into something to help the world, other people, because you feel it inside of you? What makes you come alive that you can make other people better, happier, more fulfilled through service to them? Purpose. Purpose, purpose, purpose. That is purpose. That is everything. That is why I cried when I first read that. Get the book, people. It's $12 on Amazon. It's such a good read. The summary of the process: you identify how you think in the world and what limitations you're putting on yourself. That is like the initial work. He calls them survival patterns. It's the things that your go-to patterns that help you exist in the world in a safe space that doesn't really push the boundaries, that keeps you stuck. Where they come from, how we subconsciously, so without even knowing this, we infiltrate them into our everyday habits. For me, I have an issue with being loved, with being left by people that love me. What emotions are motivating these patterns of behavior? That's the beginning work. And when you take those emotions and you put them somewhere, they're okay where they are. They've served you in order to survive up until this point. So they're not a bad thing. The next step is that you find your fulfilling emotions. On page 93, Maston writes, to discover your purpose, all you have to do is look back on your life and remember the moments that made you feel like you had come alive. That's so beautiful. I'm going to read that again. To discover your purpose, all you have to do is look back on your life and remember the moments that made you feel like you had come alive. I get emotional just thinking about it. So I love this because when I think back on the moments that really made me come to life, one of the memories that I had was one of my earliest conscious memories ever, which was with my mother when I was a little tiny boy going to preschool with her, and she would drive me to preschool. And on the way there, we had this tradition every day together we would look up for shapes in the clouds. We would try to find different animals or shapes, and we'd take turns, and I'd say, "Hey Mom, I see a turtle." And she'd be like, "Oh yeah, okay, now it's my turn. I see something else." And that was one of my happiest memories. I also remember we would drive past this rundown farmhouse. One time I pointed it out to her, that this farmhouse that was really run down, and I remember her saying to me, "That's what happens when you don't take care of your home and you don't clean." I remember her saying that, and it's so small, but it was so meaningful for me. And I think it meant a lot because the emotions tied to it. God. It was like the first time I had a mother. I have so many good emotions tied to that memory because I had never had a mother before then. She was my mom, teaching me things and giving me life lessons and playing with me, and we were interacting, and I was learning, and she was loving me, and I was loving her back. And I think a lot of people take it for granted that they have their mom, and I didn't have a mom for any point up until that moment where it's like, this is my mom. She loves me. And she's here. And she hasn't left. So it makes me feel really happy. The exercise is to teach you about what to identify the emotions that you have attached to that memory. This is a list of what I have. I was feeling loved, curious, safe, inquisitive, in awe, inspired, creative, at peace. The last step of the book is really just to change your belief structures. And that's the work. The main premise of the book is that we control our destiny. Page 71, he says, "In your heart of hearts, you do not want a comfortable life. You want a life that makes you come alive. Therefore, you must learn to face uncertainty with the knowledge that no matter what comes, you will be taken care of and you will never walk alone." So powerful. And that's the work that I'm on. So just to recap you on my trauma work, that where it started and to where it is now. So a while ago, I read the quote on Instagram that started this all, which was by Maston Kipp: "Show me your trauma and I'll show you the key to your life's purpose." I knew I had to face my trauma head on at that moment. So I started to peel back the layers because I instantly knew that it was the adoption, something I'd have been avoiding my whole life. I started talking to Erica about wanting to talk to my parents, which she ultimately pushed that I do. I read the book Claim Your Power by Maston Kipp, booked my plane ticket to South Korea for September, got my adoption paperwork from my parents. I also spoke with a friend of mine who was so ready and willing to help me with this process. She was kind enough to meet with me and talk to me about her journey to finding her mother, which she'd done a couple of years ago. And now she actually has a relationship with her birth mother in South Korea. So that's really amazing. You know, she gave me some perspective too. She was like, "You have a lot of paperwork. You have more information than I had." And yes, I did have the identifying information on my mother, but you have tons of paperwork. You have your case number, like you have the city that you were born in, you have the agency information, you have addresses. So you have a lot to work with, she told me. So I drafted an email. She kind of helped me fine tune that, and I sent it, and I heard back from my adoption agency. And so they actually have what's called post-adoption services, which is the liaison between Wide Horizons, which is the United States branch of the agency, and then the agency in Korea that they work with called Hold. And they work together using this post-adoption service. So just this week, I registered for that service. They do all of the coordination with the agency in Korea. And I'm not really sure 100% what all of that is going to be, but it's the facilitation for me for when I go back and visit to actually get set up with appointments to go to the foster agency and get some updated paperwork if they have any on the whereabouts of my parents or any relatives or anything like that. That is where I'm at now. I am going to include show notes with this episode so you can follow along. I'll include a link to Claim Your Power, which I recommend for everyone to read. If nothing else, to at least gain perspective. If you have any questions, please DM me on Instagram at youyourselfandwhy, or email me info@youyourselfandwhy.com. I really want to hear from you guys. I do this for you. I want to be able to help you ultimately. And I'm going to post another episode that updates everyone on the progress. I'm going to also record while I'm in Korea. And how do I feel about it? I feel like it's surreal. I'm nervous. I think I'm afraid of what I might find out. Afraid of what I might never be able to find out. I don't have a whole lot of expectations. Just kind of want to be open. It feels surreal that I'm doing all this work, but I'm doing the work and it feels good to be doing the work. This is the journey of finding your purpose, and I'm proud of myself to be on the journey. I'm happy that you guys are here with me on this journey. It makes it more meaningful for me to be able to share it with people, to maybe help people learn about their journeys and how they are very scary, but they're so worth it. This has already been so worth it. The things that I've learned, and you guys listened to me heal in a way. You did. You are part of my healing, which is pretty damn awesome. Yeah, I'm going to keep you guys involved because you're here with me. And I thank you for that. It means a lot to me. And this is something that I want all of you to be able to do. Your trauma is really what makes you you. It's a part of you. It makes you who you are. There are positive gains to be had from your trauma. It shapes you into the person that you are, and also the person that you can be. It's everything. It's your story. It is your future, and it is your purpose in life. And I'm learning that as I go. And it's nice to have you here with me. I love you all, and keep doing that work that's worth doing.